March 18th, 1925, a Wednesday afternoon, the kind of day where the air feels wrong, too warm, too still, too waiting. By nightfall, 695 people would be dead, 2,000 more injured, 15,000 homes erased from the earth, 3 states carved by a single mile-wide shadow, moving at 60 miles per hour. Listen to what one reporter wrote just hours after it passed. The day grew black, the air filled with 10,000 things, boards, bricks, bodies, timbers, glass, metal, livestock, railroad cars, entire buildings, lifted, shredded, and scattered across 3 states. This is the story of the tri-state tornado, the deadliest tornado in United States history, 219 miles, in under 4 hours. No warnings, no sirens. No radar, just a darkness that moved faster than most people could run. And here's what makes it even stranger. A century later, scientists still debate whether it was truly one tornado, or a family of tornadoes born from the same supercell, dying and reborn, again and again and again. The answer? It changes everything. We thought we knew about that day. This is not just a story about wind. It's a story about time, about geography, about the cruel mathematics of being in the wrong place when the sky decides to rewrite the map. It's about schools that became tombs, mining towns where hundreds of tons of steel rolled like toys, and towns like Murphysboro, Illinois, where 234 people died in 3 minutes. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to rebuild that afternoon, March 18th, 1925, a Wednesday afternoon, the kind of day where the air feels wrong, too warm, too still, too waiting. By nightfall, 695 people would be dead, 2,000 more injured, 15,000 homes erased from the earth, 3 states carved by a single mile-wide shadow, moving at 60 miles per hour. Listen to what one reporter wrote just hours after it passed. The day grew black, the air filled with 10,000 things. 10,000 things, boards, bricks, bodies, timbers, glass, metal, livestock, railroad cars, entire buildings, lifted, shredded, and scattered across 3 states. This is the story of the tri-state tornado, the deadliest tornado in United States history. 219 miles, in under 4 hours. No warnings, no sirens, no radar, just a darkness that moved faster than most people could run. And here's what makes it even stranger. A century later, scientists still debate whether it was truly one tornado, or a family of tornadoes born from the same supercell, dying and reborn, again and again and again. The answer? It changes everything we thought we knew about that day. This is not just a story about wind. It's a story about time, about geography, about the cruel mathematics of being in the wrong place when the sky decides to rewrite the map. It's about schools that became tombs, mining towns where hundreds of tons of steel rolled like toys, and towns like Murphysboro, Illinois, where 234 people died in 3 minutes. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to rebuild that afternoon, town by town, mile by mile, minute by minute. We're going to walk the path, see what they saw, and understand what made this storm not just deadly, but unmatched. Because even now, with all our satellites and supercomputers and storm chasers, we've never seen anything quite like it again. And maybe we should be grateful for that. Let's go back to the morning of March 18th, 1925. Back to when the sky began to load the dice. Here's what most people don't understand about tornadoes. They don't just happen, they're built. Piece by piece, layer by layer, like a bomb that takes hours to arm and seconds to detonate. The morning of March 18th started with a low-pressure system, sitting just over the Arkansas-Missouri border. Not unusual. Spring storms love that area. But then, the ingredients started stacking. From the Gulf of Mexico, warm, moist air surged north. Dew points in the 70s. That's rocket fuel for thunderstorms. At the same time, a dry line, a sharp boundary between dry air from the west and that humid air from the south, set up shop right along eastern Missouri and Illinois. And aloft, high-level winds screaming from the southwest, jet stream winds, creating something called wind shear. That's when the wind changes speed or direction with height, and it makes the atmosphere start to spin. By late morning, you had three things in perfect, terrible alignment. Instability, that's the fuel. Lift, that's the match. And shear. That's what turns a thunderstorm into a rotating beast. Meteorologists today call this a high-risk setup. The kind of day where you issue tornado watches at dawn, where storm chasers triple-check their routes, where the National Weather Service sends out red box warnings with words like particularly dangerous situation. But in 1925, there were no tornado watches. In fact, the United States Weather Bureau had a policy, an actual official policy, that forbid forecasters from using the word tornado in public forecasts. Why? Because they thought it would cause panic. Let that sink in. The very word that might have saved lives was banned. So farmers went to their fields, children went to school, miners descended into shafts, and no one knew what was building in the west. By noon, a monster supercell had formed over the Missouri Ozarks, towering, rotating, organized. The kind of storm that, on modern radar, would light up like a Christmas tree. All with hook echoes and debris signatures and velocity couplets screaming, "Get to shelter." But there was no radar, no satellites, no weather balloons with real-time data. Just a sky that looked wrong to anyone who cared to look up. And at 1:01 p.m., Central Standard Time, near a small town called Ellington, Missouri, in Reynolds County, near the Shannon County line, the funnel touched down. And for the next 3.5 hours, it would barely lift. 1:01 p.m., Ellington, Missouri, population, maybe a few hundred. A quiet mining community nestled in the Ozarks, rolling hills, dense timber, farms scattered across the hollows. And then, the roar. Survivors later said it sounded like a freight train. But that doesn't quite capture it, does it? A freight train has a rhythm, a cadence. This was chaos given a voice, a scream that rose and fell and rose again, as the funnel chewed through timber and stone and flesh. The tornado was already big. Early estimates suggest it was a 1/4 mile wide, and growing. It moved east-northeast, at 60 miles per hour. That's a mile every minute. Think about that. If you saw it on the horizon, you had 60 seconds before it reached you. Maybe less if the rain and hail blocked your view. Ellington took the first hit. Homes splintered, barns exploded outward. Trees that had stood for a century, ripped from the earth, roots and all. And the debris, it didn't just fall nearby. Oh no, debris from Ellington, Missouri, was found 50 miles away. Boards, roofing, personal belongings, carried by winds estimated at over 300 miles per hour. But the tornado wasn't done with Missouri, not even close. By 1:15, it reached Annapolis, a larger town, more people, more buildings, and the funnel was widening. 90% of Annapolis was destroyed, 90%. Entire blocks reduced to kindling. The Methodist church, gone. The school, gone. Homes where families had lived for generations, turned into fields of splinters and scattered memories. And the storm kept moving, 1 mile per minute, east-northeast, relentless, Bollinger County, next. The tornado crossed into Bollinger County around 1:30. Schools were in session, children at their desks, teachers at blackboards, and then the walls came down. Near Sedgwickville, the damage was so severe that surveyors later noted ground scouring. That's when a tornado is so violent, so powerful, that it doesn't just destroy what's on the ground. It removes the ground itself. Topsoil, grass, pavement, just gone. leaving nothing but raw earth and silence. The death toll in Missouri was climbing. 11 dead in Ellington and the surrounding area. Dozens more in Annapolis and Bollinger County. Injuries in the hundreds. And the tornado? It hadn't even crossed into Illinois yet. At 2:20 p.m., the funnel crossed the Mississippi River, and Illinois was about to learn what Missouri already knew, that this wasn't just a tornado. This was a reaper with a schedule to keep. 2:20 p.m. The tornado enters Illinois near Gorham, a small town, quiet, rural, and in the storm's path. Gorham didn't stand a chance. The funnel was now nearly a mile wide, a churning black wall of debris and death, moving at over 60 miles per hour. At that speed, at that size, there's no taking shelter. There's only surviving. Or not. Gorham was devastated. 34 dead. Every major building destroyed or heavily damaged. And the tornado moved on, 1 mile per minute. But Gorham was just a warm-up, because at 2:32 p.m., the tornado reached Murphysboro. Murphysboro, Illinois. Population, around 11,000. A thriving city, railroads, industry. Schools, churches, families. And at 2:32 p.m. on March 18th, 1925, it became the site of the deadliest single-city toll from any tornado in American history. 234 people. 234. Dead in 3 minutes. Imagine it. You're at home, at work, at school, the sky darkens, the wind picks up, and then the roar, and then nothing. Entire city blocks, erased. Block after block after block. Reduced to rubble. The Illinois Central Railroad yards destroyed. Locomotives, weighing hundreds of tons, flipped like toys. Freight cars hurled off the tracks. And the people? One survivor, a woman named Mrs. Ella Mae Jones, later told reporters, "I couldn't tell which direction was home anymore, because there was no home. The schools, oh, the schools. Longfellow School in Murphysboro collapsed. Children trapped under tons of brick and timber. Teachers trying to shield students with their own bodies. And the screams that survivors said they could still hear. Years later, the death toll in Murphysboro, 234 confirmed dead. But the actual number? Probably higher. Because in the chaos, in the rubble, some bodies were never found. Some people were simply erased. And the tornado, it didn't stop. It didn't slow. It didn't care. At 2:37 p.m., 5 minutes after Murphysboro, the tornado reached DeSoto, Illinois. A smaller town, fewer people, but a school with children inside. The DeSoto school was a 2-story brick building, solid construction, built to last, but not built to withstand winds of 300 miles per hour. At 2:37 p.m., the tornado hit the school head-on. 33 children died, 33, ages 6 to 14, at their desks. One teacher, Miss Lenora Wadley, tried to shield her students. She died with them. The building collapsed in seconds, walls folded inward, floors pancaked, and the children who survived later said they couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't hear anything but the roar and the screaming. Rescue efforts began immediately. Farmers, townspeople, anyone who could dig, pulling children from the rubble, some alive, many not. The death toll in DeSoto, 69 total, 33 of them children, and the tornado moved on. At 3 p.m., it reached West Frankfort. West Frankfort was a mining town, coal country, big industry, strong buildings. Surely it could withstand. No. 148 dead in West Frankfort. 148. The Peabody coal mine Tipple, an 80-foot-tall structure made of steel and concrete, rolled, not collapsed, rolled hundreds of tons, moved like a child's toy. Miners underground felt the shockwave. Thought it was an explosion, came up to find their town gone. Homes, stores, churches, the Orient No. 2 mine, destroyed. The New Orient mine, damaged beyond repair. And the people, 148 lives, extinguished in minutes. But here's what's terrifying about West Frankfort. The tornado didn't just destroy it, it burned it. Because when the winds tore through homes, they knocked over coal stoves, knocked over gas lamps, and the debris, dry, splintered wood, ignited. So, as survivors crawled from the rubble, they crawled into fire. Entire neighborhoods burned through the night, and firefighters from neighboring towns, they couldn't get there. Roads blocked by debris, bridges destroyed, rails twisted, so the fires burned. And people who survived the tornado died in the flames. And still, the tornado moved on. 3:10 p.m. The tornado leaves West Frankfort, moves east-northeast through Hamilton County, White County, rural farmland, scattered homesteads, families who had no idea what was coming. Because remember, there were no warnings, no radio broadcasts, no phone calls, just a darkness on the horizon. And by the time you saw it, it was too late. Farm after farm, obliterated. Barns reduced to scattered boards, livestock killed where they stood, and farmers who went outside to secure their animals, to close barn doors, never came back. The tornado stayed on the ground, mile after mile after mile, carving a path of destruction through Illinois farmland. And the speed, 60 miles per hour, 73 at its peak. That's faster than most cars could drive in 1925. Survivors in the rural corridor reported something strange. They said the tornado changed. Sometimes it looked like a classic funnel. Sometimes it was a wedge, wider than it was tall. Sometimes it was shrouded in rain and hail, invisible until it was right on top of you. And that's part of the mystery we'll get to later. Was this one tornado, evolving as it moved? Or was it a family of tornadoes, dying and reforming, again and again? But for now, let's stay with the path, because at 4 p.m., the tornado crossed the Wabash River and entered Indiana, 4 p.m., Griffin, Indiana, a tiny town, maybe 100 people, and it was gone, completely destroyed. Every building, every home, erased. 25 people dead in Griffin alone. And here's where things got even worse for Indiana. Because it wasn't just the tornado, it was the rain. Heavy rains before and after the tornado flooded the Wabash River. Roads were impassable, bridges washed out. And rescue crews, they couldn't get to Griffin, not by car, not by truck. So they came by boat and by train. It took until March 23rd, 5 days later, before all the victims were recovered. From Griffin, the tornado moved northeast. Owensville area, more deaths, more destruction, and then Princeton, Indiana county seat, larger population, and the tornado hit it hard. 45 dead in Princeton and the surrounding area. The courthouse damaged, schools destroyed, entire neighborhoods gone. But by now, the tornado was weakening. Not because it ran out of energy, but because it was running out of atmosphere. See, supercell thunderstorms need fuel. They need warm, moist air to feed on. And by 4:30 p.m., after 3.5 hours on the ground, after 219 miles, the tornado finally lifted. Near Petersburg, Indiana, 4:30 p.m., the funnel rose back into the cloud, the roar faded, the darkness lifted, and the silence that followed was deafening. 4:30 p.m., March 18th, 1925. The tri-state tornado was over, but the nightmare, it was just beginning. Because now, people had to look at what had happened, had to walk through what remained, had to count. Let's start with the numbers, the cold, hard numbers. Path length, 219 miles. That's the longest tornado track ever recorded in the United States. Still, a century later, duration. Approximately 3.5 to 3 3/4 hours. On the ground, continuously, or nearly so, for that entire time. Average forward speed, 62 miles per hour. Peak speed, 73 miles per hour. That's faster than the speed limit on most highways today. Width, 3/4 of a mile to a full mile in places. Some stretches, even wider. Wind speed, estimated at over 300 miles per hour. This was before the Fujita scale, before enhanced Fujita. But modern reanalysis suggests this was an EF5 or stronger. Fatalities, 695, confirmed. The actual number is likely higher, because some bodies were never found. Some people were listed as missing for years. Injuries, over 2,000, many of them catastrophic. Amputations, crushing injuries, burns from the fires that followed, homes destroyed, approximately 15,000 families made homeless in an afternoon. Damage cost in $1925, $16.5 million. Adjusted for inflation today, over $290 million. But numbers don't tell the whole story, do they? Let's talk about what people saw, what they found. In Murphysboro, a piano was found lodged in a tree. A piano, lifted, carried, and embedded in branches 30 feet off the ground. A wooden board, driven through a maple tree trunk, so deeply that it held a man's weight. That's how powerful the winds were. In West Frankfort, a boxcar from the railroad was found half a mile from the tracks. A boxcar, weighing tons, picked up, carried, dropped, into Soto. Rescuers found a little girl's shoe, just one shoe. They never found the girl. In Princeton, a man's body was found wrapped around a telephone pole, like the wind had fused him there. These aren't numbers. These are nightmares. Within hours, the rescue effort began, but it was chaos. First responders didn't exist the way they do now. No FEMA, no National Guard deployments, no emergency management agencies. It was neighbors, farmers with shovels, miners with their bare hands, doctors from nearby towns who came by train, by car, by horse. The American Red Cross arrived within days, set up tent cities for the homeless, provided food, water, medical care, and tried to make sense of the scale. Pullman Railroad cars were converted into makeshift hospitals. Because the actual hospitals, many of them were destroyed. In Murphysboro, they ran out of coffins, had to order more from St. Louis, and even then, mass graves were dug. Because there were simply too many bodies. In West Frankfort, the fires burned for 2 days. Entire neighborhoods reduced to ash, and firefighters from as far as Evansville came to help. And through it all, the stories of survival. A woman in Gorham who rode out the tornado in her bathtub lived. A family in Murphysboro who huddled in their cellar. The house above them, gone. But they lived. A teacher in DeSoto who covered 3 children with her own body. She died. They lived. And stories of loss. Entire families wiped out. 8 people in one house, gone. 10 in another, gone. Children who went to school that morning and never came home. Fathers who went to work and were found miles away in a field. The scale of it was incomprehensible. And yet, people kept looking, kept digging, kept hoping, because that's what humans do. Now, let's talk about the mystery. The question that haunted meteorologists for decades: was the tri-state tornado one tornado, or was it a family of tornadoes born from the same supercell? Because here's the thing, 219 miles is insane. The average tornado in the United States travels about 5 miles. 5. This one traveled 219. That's over 40 times the average. So, could one tornado really stay on the ground that long? Or did it lift briefly, only for another funnel to drop from the same parent storm? The original survey in 1925 said it was continuous, one tornado, start to finish. But they didn't have modern tools, no radar, no satellite, just eyewitness accounts and damage surveys. So, in 2013, a team of meteorologists led by Robert Johns reanalyzed the path using modern techniques, damage indicators, survivor accounts, historical records, and they published their findings in the Electronic Journal of Severe Storms Meteorology. Their conclusion? The core segment, the stretch through Illinois from around Gorham to the Indiana border, was almost certainly one continuous tornado, 151 to 174 miles, without lifting. But the ends, Missouri and far eastern Indiana, those sections are debatable. There may have been brief lifts, moments where the funnel rose back into the cloud, only to drop again, what's called a cyclic tornado. Or it could have been a tornado family, multiple funnels from the same supercell, trading off like relay runners. The truth? We'll never know for certain, because the tools to definitively answer that question didn't exist in 1925. But here's what we do know. Whether it was one tornado or a family, the supercell itself was continuous, the same rotating thunderstorm, tracked from Missouri to Indiana, and the damage was continuous. No gaps, no breaks, just mile after mile after mile of destruction. So, for all practical purposes, it was one event, one storm, one nightmare. And that is what makes it so terrifying, because it means the atmosphere can do this, can create a storm so organized, so persistent, that it carves a path across 3 states. And if it happened once, it could happen again. Let's talk about records, because the tri-state tornado holds a lot of them. And a century later, most of them still stand. Record number 1, longest path, 219 miles. No tornado since has come close. The second longest, the Hackleburg-Phil Campbell tornado in Alabama, April 27, 2011. Path length, 85 miles. Incredibly destructive. EF5, but still less than half the length of the tri-state. Record number 2, longest duration, 3.5 hours or more. Most tornadoes last minutes. Violent tornadoes might last 30 minutes, an hour if they're really persistent. But 3.5 hours? That's unheard of. Record number 3, deadliest tornado, 695 fatalities. The second deadliest tornado in U.S. history, the Natchez, Mississippi tornado of 1840, 317 deaths, less than half the toll of the tri-state. And in the modern era, with all our warnings and radar and shelters, the deadliest tornado was Joplin, Missouri in 2011. 161 deaths, horrific, catastrophic, but still less than 1/4 the toll of the tri-state. Record number 4, fastest forward speed, 62 miles per hour average, 73 at its peak. Most tornadoes move at 30 to 40 miles per hour. This one moved nearly twice as fast. And that speed is part of why it was so deadly, because you couldn't outrun it, not on foot, not in a car. Not in 1925, record number 5, deadliest single city toll, Murphysboro, Illinois, 234 deaths in 3 minutes. No city before or since has lost that many people to a single tornado. Record number 6, most injuries over 2,000. The sheer number of people hurt speaks to how many towns this storm hit. It wasn't just one city, it was dozens. And here's the thing, these records, they're not just numbers, they're warnings, because they tell us what the atmosphere is capable of. They tell us that the worst can happen, and they remind us why we have warning systems today. Because imagine, if a storm like this hit today, would we survive it better? Absolutely. We have radar, satellites, storm spotters, emergency managers. The average tornado warning lead time today is 20 minutes. In 1925, 0. But even with all that, a storm this fast, this violent, this persistent, would still be catastrophic. Because at the end of the day, you can't stop a tornado. You can only get out of its way. And if it's moving at 70 miles per hour, there's not much getting out of the way you can do. So, what's different now? What have we learned in the century since the tri-state tornado? Let's start with the biggest change: warnings. In 1925, the word tornado was banned from public forecasts. Today, the National Weather Service issues tornado watches when conditions are favorable, and tornado warnings when a tornado has been spotted or indicated on radar. And those warnings work. The average lead time for a tornado warning today is 14 to 20 minutes. That's 14 to 20 minutes to get to a basement, a safe room, a shelter. And detection rates? Radar can detect about 95% of significant tornadoes. Compare that to 1925. 0 warnings. 0 detection. Just the sky going dark, radar and technology, Doppler radar, changed everything. It doesn't just see rain. It sees rotation inside a storm. It sees debris being lofted into the air. It sees the signature of a tornado, even if no one on the ground has seen it yet. And dual polarization radar, that's even better. It can tell the difference between rain, hail, and debris. So when a tornado is on the ground, radar can see it, even through rain and darkness. Storm Prediction Center. The Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, issues outlooks days in advance. They can tell you 5 days out that severe weather is possible. They can tell you hours out where tornadoes are likely. And on days like April 27th, 2011, or May 20th, 2013, days when violent tornadoes are forecast, they issue high-risk outlooks, the kind of outlook that says, if you are in this area, prepare. In 1925, people woke up to sunshine and went to school, building codes and safe rooms. After the tri-state tornado, and after other deadly tornadoes like Xenia in 1974 and Joplin in 2011, we learned. We learned that brick schools can collapse. We learned that mobile homes are death traps in tornadoes. We learned that you need reinforcement, anchoring, safe rooms. Today, many schools in tornado-prone areas have safe rooms, reinforced concrete, anchored to the foundation, designed to withstand EF5 winds. Could they have saved the children in DeSoto? Yes. Public awareness and education. We teach kids in school what to do in a tornado: get to the lowest floor, interior room, no windows, cover your head. We have drills, we have emergency plans, we have apps on our phones that scream at us when a tornado warning is issued. In 1925, people didn't even know what a tornado warning was. But here's the thing. Even with all these improvements, tornadoes still kill Joplin, Moore, Tuscaloosa, Mayfield, because at the end of the day, a tornado is a force of nature, and nature doesn't care about our technology. But we're better prepared, we're smarter, and we've saved thousands of lives because of it. So, when we remember the tri-state tornado, we remember not just the horror, but the lessons, because those 695 lives were not lost in vain. They taught us how to survive. March 18th, 2025, 100 years after the tri-state tornado, in Murphysboro, Illinois, church bells rang. At 2:32 p.m., the exact time the tornado struck, the bells rang, and then silence. A moment of silence for 234 souls, for the children who never came home from school, for the fathers who never returned from the rail yards, for the mothers who died shielding their babies. In West Frankfort, survivors gathered at a memorial, many of them in their 90s now. Some of them were children in 1925. They remembered the roar, the darkness, the smell of smoke and wet earth and death. One woman, 98 years old, said, "I still dream about it. Every March, I dream about the sky." In Griffin, Indiana, where the entire town was erased, a historical marker stands. It reads, "In memory of those lost in the tri-state tornado, March 18, 1925, may we never forget." And we haven't forgotten, because the tri-state tornado changed how we think about weather, changed how we think about warnings, changed how we build our schools and our homes. It taught us that the sky can kill, but it also taught us that we can survive. Because humans are resilient, we rebuild, we remember, we learn. And a century later, the children of Murphysboro go to school in safe rooms. The miners of West Frankfort have tornado sirens that scream warnings. The farmers of Indiana have radar on their phones. We can't stop tornadoes, but we can prepare. And so, we remember. We remember the day the sky went black. We remember the roar that shook 3 states. We remember the 695 who never saw March 19th. Because memory is a warning, and a warning is a gift. The tri-state tornado, 219 miles, 3.5 hours, 695 lives. The deadliest tornado in United States history, and a reminder that when the sky speaks, we should listen.